A delegation of the Caribbean community arrives in Haiti to assess the national crisis alongside members of the government and civil society. European Union ministers gather in Stockholm for an informal meeting to talk about the upcoming reform of the European electricity market, energy security, and the bloc's industrial competitiveness. And an Israeli attack on Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank killed one person, injured at least 100, and burned several homes. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. A delegation of the Caribbean community headed by Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness will arrive in Haiti on Monday to analyze the national crisis with members of the government and civil society. The group will exchange views with Prime Minister Henry, members of the High Transitional Council, and political leaders, among others. The visit was agreed upon at the recent conference of leaders of the member nations of the organization that took place in the Bahamas, and in which the country still showed reluctance with the sending of troops requested by Henry to contain the gangs. According to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, Emery Brown, the delegation will be joined by representatives from Canada. Regarding the deployment of foreign troops in the Caribbean country, Brown considered that it is a bit premature and insisted that the solution to the crisis must be led by Haiti. On Sunday, the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador denounced the assassination of Eduardo Mendua, who led the fight against oil companies exploiting the Amazon. The indigenous organization took to Twitter to denounce the killing of Eduardo Mendua, head of international relations belonging to the Cofan people in the province of Sucumbíos. The victim, who was one of the most visible faces of the indigenous resistance as he had been repeatedly denouncing the actions of the oil companies against the communities, was in his farm when hooded men shot him. CONAI's President Leonidas Issa held Ecuador's head of state Guillermo Lasso as accountable for Mendua's murder, and denounced indigenous leaders endure permanent persecution in Ecuador. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez confirmed his nation, together with Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, and Cuba, are preparing a regional agreement to control inflation. The agreement contemplates a summit between the leaders of these nations scheduled on March 17th. It will also establish a system to exchange sensitive products between the participants, aimed at facilitating imports. The Argentinian president described the exchange mechanisms as a type of clearing products, and an example that if Argentina records significant increases in an item such as clothing, it could turn to one of the partners, such as Brazil, to obtain it at a lower price for a given period in exchange for another more affordable item more locally, such as soybeans. Ecuadorian authorities report that ashes from the Cotopaxi volcano reached 2.4 kilometers high. According to expert reports, the ashes moved southwest without affecting populated areas. Officials point out that with the recent events recorded in the last few months, the volcano is expected to remain active for several weeks. It is worth mentioning that Cotopaxi is considered the most dangerous volcano in the country due to its eruptive style, relief, snow cover, and the number of people at risk. In Paraguay, about 4,000 families have been affected by the rain registered in the last hours. According to the National Emergency Department, the districts affected by the heavy rains are Alto Paraguay, Amambay, Concepcion, and San Pedro, where power outages and flash floods were also reported. In the meantime, emergency crews have gone to the affected areas to assess the damage and to provide assistance to the families. In Brazil, the death toll after the rains on the northern coast of Sao Paulo rose to 65. So far, 55 bodies have been identified and released for burial, including 18 children. The figure was confirmed by Sao Paulo's civil defense. The entity specifies in a statement that there were 64 deaths in Sao Sebastião and 1 in Ubatuba, and the identified bodies were delivered for burial. The state government said it is still looking for safe land, in addition to the 3 already chosen to start building houses for the victims left homeless, as the priority is to help the victims and to attend to the more than 1,150 displaced and 1,290 homeless people. In Cuba, forestry workers, firefighters, military and other forces continue to fight the flames of a forest fire which has spread over more than 1,500 hectares of vegetation in Holguin. The fire broke out 8 days ago in the eastern province of Holguin and has so far ravaged several forest areas. Given the severity of the situation, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel and other members of the State Council are permanently monitoring the situation. On their part, municipal officials in Holguin and Mayari said they will continue their efforts to protect the population, communities and economic enclaves in the affected areas. Currently, Cuba is under the dry season, which runs from November to April, with the low humidity levels and a temperature of up to 28 degrees Celsius, which is favorable for frequent forest fires. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. European Union energy ministers gather in Stockholm for an informal meeting to talk about the upcoming reform of the European electricity market, energy security ahead of next winter, and the bloc's industrial competitiveness.
We are aiming to provide an as efficient presidency as possible, moving this forward swiftly, because the European Union's agenda has been very much tainted by emergency resolutions and emergency decisions. This is finally something on the table where we can sort of lift the gaze and look onto the horizon and find a more sort of long-term solutions to the energy crisis.
A European energy market reform can do a lot of good, but it can also do a lot of damage to a system which is functioning. And therefore we are saying, let's be ambitious when it comes to the no-regret measures. Let's be fast. Let's set the priorities for future investment. But on the other side, let's get the fundamentals right on the basis of a proper impact assessment so that we can ensure future investment.
United Kingdom Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen held a meeting on Monday in a breakthrough aimed at resetting strained relations since Brexit. The meeting at Windsor between both diplomats aimed at ending more than a year of negotiations over the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, agreed in 2020 as part of Britain's EU divorce. The pact kept the province in the European single market and subject to different trade rules than the rest of the UK. In this sense, the UK government had threatened a unilateral overhaul of the protocol unless the EU agreed to wholesale changes. The German government has pushed back against a demand by the country's data protection commissioner to take down its Facebook page over data privacy concerns. The German government has pushed back against a demand by the country's data protection commission to take down its Facebook page over data privacy concerns. Late last week, Data Protection Commissioner Ulrich Kelber gave the government's press office 4 weeks to shut down their Facebook page. He argued that although the operators of Facebook pages and the network's owner, Meta, have a joint responsibility in processing users' personal data, a deeply held concern in Germany, the German government has been unable to prove the principles of data protection were being adhered to. The government will use these 4 weeks to examine the notice thoroughly and carefully to decide on the next steps. Russian and Venezuelan aviation authorities agreed that their airlines can operate flights between the countries with a stopover in Cuba, according to a statement published Monday by the Russian Federal Air Transport Agency. The release text indicates the search for a strengthening of bilateral cooperation in air transport. With that purpose, it was agreed that to grant the airlines Northwind of Russia and Conviasa of Venezuela the right to fly from the fifth freedom of the air. Specifically, the fifth freedom of the air allows the carriers to take on and disembark passengers, mail and cargo in a country of stopover. The routes in question are Moscow, Varadero in Cuba and the Port La Mar in Venezuela, while the Venezuelan ones will be able to fly from Caracas to Moscow with stopover in Havana, Cuba, both on their outbound and return flights. The agreement of the aviation authority is valid until the end of the 2024 summer season of the International Air Transport Association. On Monday, the foreign ministers of New Zealand and Japan met in Tokyo to strengthen security ties and collaboration in the Pacific region. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Nanaia Mahuta, who will remain in Tokyo until next Wednesday, met her Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi to discuss deepening bilateral ties towards realizing a free and open Indo-Pacific, to maintain and develop free and open international order based on a new national security strategy stemming from a security information sharing agreement. The two leaders have also agreed to work closely to support priorities in the Pacific region in areas such as climate change and maritime security towards regional resilience and cohesion.
Our discussions have underlined that we share many of the same concerns about security trends in the Indo-Pacific. We are committed to deepening our security partnership to help protect peace and the rules-based order in our region and beyond. To this end, we welcomed good progress on negotiations towards an Aotearoa New Zealand-Japan Security Information Sharing Agreement.
And teleSUR keeps connecting the global south, as now you can watch us in 33 African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. An Israeli attack on Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank killed one person, injured at least 100, and burned several homes. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed the victim's name was Hameh Arktash, 37 years old, who died after being shot in the abdomen by armed settlers who attacked the village of Satara. Another Palestinian was severely injured with a fractured skull after being hit with stones during another offensive against the village of Huwara, the primary focus of the assaults. Under the complicity of the occupation forces, Israeli extremists burned and destroyed several cars, trees, and houses in the village.
Members of the Congress expressed their solidarity with the Syrian people and the creation of a delegation of the Arab Parliamentary Union to emphasize our support and stand with the Syrian people and continue to provide the necessary requirements to support our Syrian brothers after the earthquake that hit several cities and towns.
A bomb in a crowded bazaar in southwestern Pakistan killed at least 5 people and wounded 16 amid a surge in violence in the South Asian nation. Authorities stated no one immediately claimed responsibility for the attack in Barkan, about 600 kilometers northeast of Quetta, the provincial capital. According to the local police chief, Sajjad Afzal, the bomb was rigged to a motorcycle and was detonated by a remote control. Apart from inflicting casualties, the explosion left several shops at the market badly damaged. Meanwhile, Barkan Deputy Commissioner Abdullah Koso added that rescuers took the wounded to the hospital to receive immediate medical attention.
What is happening is the burning of an entire village. This is what they do. Dozens of tents and houses are destroyed and burned. The safe houses that people are sitting in, about 400 to 500 settlers broke in with the army protecting them. They walk freely down the street. The settlers enter about 500 meters into Hawara. At the distance, they burn more than 20 establishments, including shops, houses, and trees. Even the trees were not spared. They burned everything. They burned everything they found.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets in Baghdad on Monday to voice their dissent against a draft election law that would increase the size of the country's electoral districts. The current law, under which the 2021 elections were held, breaks each of the country's 18 provinces into several electoral districts. The law, which was a key demand for the hundreds of thousands of protesters who took to the streets in late 2019, was seen as giving independent candidates a better chance of winning. Last week, Parliament debated a draft law that would return Iraq to having one electoral district per governorate. Independent members of Parliament who objected to the proposal walked out of the session, which ended early due to losing quorum. On Monday, Nigeria's Electoral Commission announced preliminary results of parliamentary and presidential polls that roll out through the weekend. According to the electoral body, Nigerian presidential candidate Peter Obi has gotten the most votes in Lagos State, one of the paramount ones to define a winner. Obi of the Labour Party got 582,454 votes, just ahead of former Lagos Governor Bola Tinubu, who was running for the governing All Progressive Congress Party. Nearly 90 million were eligible to vote in the elections to choose a successor to President Muhammadu Buhari, with many hoping for a new leader to tackle insecurity, economic troubles, and widening poverty. Voting on Saturday was mostly peaceful, with scattered incidents and delays in opening some polling stations. To win the presidency, a candidate must get the most votes and also win at least 25% of ballots cast in 2/3 of Nigeria's 36 states.
There were a number of irregularities that, honestly, as an organization, we cannot excuse or can no longer tolerate, because it reaches a point where, as a civil society organization who has invested a great deal to build confidence in the process, but we also have a responsibility to hold the Electoral Commission accountable for these irregularities that we have observed. When we have our final report, we will share more details about it, but we know that there are places where the elections did not go ahead yesterday.
We have come to the end of this news program. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.